Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for the people that are in early and starting to come in. We are starting to do more webinars, and we're excited about doing these and highlighting people that are at RoofCon. That's what we're all about, obviously. Like we've been hosting RoofCon. We're going on year 7 for us of hosting RoofCon. And for the people that don't know, RoofCon is I heard someone say this recently, and I really like the way that they said it. They said it's a trade show with a lot of education. And I really like that because we always think of it as a conference because we have a lot of education going on, but really we have so many exhibitors and so many people that you can meet, and we started doing these breakout sessions in the show floor that have been really good and really powerful. And so in doing these webinars, what we want to do is, we stopped doing the podcast that we were doing, and now we're just trying to highlight some of the people that are at RoofCon and that are a part of our community. So what we're going to do is I want to introduce Claudio so that he can start, let you guys know who he is. And let me ask you this before we get started. I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about you, not from the business perspective. Tell us about Claudio, the man himself. And then let me ask you also, you've been to RoofCon now at least once, so I want to get your thoughts on RoofCon as well before we get started.
Great. Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about me, so you know more. Who's talking. So I was born in Argentina. Um, I was an entrepreneur when I was a kid. So I started an English teaching institute when I was 18 years old. It was called the American Way, and for the next about 8 years, I was the owner of the institute. I made it grow quite a lot. Actually, I had most of the top US companies that were stationed in Argentina were my clients. I was teaching English to executives. So I sold it when I was 26. So I actually did sell my business. I built it and sold it. And I am very, very, very passionate about entrepreneurship. I believe that small businesses and entrepreneurs are the ones who drive the economy and most of the country, whether it's the US or any other country. And it's a group of people that have the stamina, I would say, to start a business, to put everything in that business, your life, your family, your relationships, and of course your money. And unfortunately, very few are actually successful. The statistics show that more than 50% of the businesses fold within the first 2 years, and like 70% between the 5th year and the 10th year. So it's really hard to be a business owner, and I have tremendous respect for the business owners. So I sold my company and I joined J&J, Johnson & Johnson, and I made Johnson & Johnson my home for the next 20 some years of my life. I went from sales rep in Argentina. I did all the career with J&J, and eventually I exited J&J when I turned 50, being the director of distribution for all the US here in New Jersey. So I did a really nice career, but I really wanted to go back to entrepreneurship. And at that point, I said, well, what can I do? What should I do with all the skills that I acquired in all my life? And I thought that because I was with Johnson & Johnson and I had a tremendous learning experience with them, and I was able to do everything. I did finance, I did marketing, I did sales, I did supply chain, and a lot more. I said, well, I can bring this to other business owners and help them do the exit, because you're basically building a business for the first 20, 30 years of your life, and you don't want to make the wrong decision when you sell it, because it could all crumble at that point. So I decided to become a business broker first, and then I decided that I sold everything. I sold restaurants, hair salons, distribution, whatever. And then I decided to focus only in roofing. And the reason why I decided to focus only in roofing is, first of all, because I thought that it was much better to focus on an industry and learn the industry inside and out. And second of all, because roofing is one of the industries that you have people that are very hardworking, that they build their businesses from the ground up, and that they do deserve, the best possible exit, and that's what I do. Now, what I think about RoofCon, I was there only once last year. I'm going to be here next year. I loved it. I thought it was a really good opportunity to meet a lot of people, not only roofers, but also people from other parts of the industry. RoofCon really helped me get to know a lot of people, like, for example, the experts that I'm now working with them on several projects. We did some trainings with them and what have you. That was from RoofCon, and of course, lots of roofers and people that are helping me move my practice. My practice is solely dedicated to roofing, so RoofCon is helping me with that.
I love it. Okay, so as we're getting started, I want to lay how this is going to work out. We're going to have a little bit over an hour right now to be able to go through questions. I have a set of questions, and I'm going to be moderating questions that come in the chat. So if anyone has a specific private equity question, drop it in the chat or raise your hand, and I will ask it to Claudio once we get to a good question spot. Now, additionally, at the end, we'll have an open time for questions as well. So if someone just has any questions at the end, we can do that there. But I'll be moderating throughout. So, Claudio, let's get started. And
Okay.
The way that we framed this, I know initially, was the big pain point that we see a lot is a lot of people are getting communication from private equity companies. People get emails, they get calls, they get all sorts of things. I feel like way more now than was, 5 years ago. And I want to know, if someone's getting a call or they're getting an email, what are the things that I need to be looking out for? Because I'm sure that there are some people that are legit. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that probably are not. And so what are the things I'm looking for if I get an initial call or an email from someone claiming to be a person that is interested in buying or investing into my company?
Great question, Diego. Great start of this. The first thing I would say is, number one, you have to be ready for that call a long time before you actually get that call. Now, everybody's getting those calls for sure, but to have a business ready to sell, it takes a long time. And most businesses, I have never seen a business that was ready to sell when they signed up to sell with me. So you have to be ready for that. And I do want to go back to that point later on how you get your business ready for sale. Now, when you do get that call, the first question is this a real private equity, or is this a somebody that says they're private equity, but they're not? And that's the number one thing. I mean, you just said it. There's a lot of good players out there, but there's a lot of players that are not necessarily good. So the question that you should ask them is, okay, fine, you're private equity. Tell me, how many deals have you done last year? Tell me what's your assets under management, AUM. Tell me what your leadership looks like. How do you fund your deal? Just basic questions that they're going to tell you if they're actually private equity or not. You can go to their website. Anybody can make a beautiful website, but then you have to dig under that and see, have they actually closed any deals? Do they have any money? There's groups that are called search funds and independent sponsors that are not private equity, and they if they're not forward with what they say, they can call private equity, and they're not. Now, private equity is not the only one who's going to call you to buy your business as well. There's other people that are going to call you. There's strategic buyers, which typically are other roofing companies that are looking to expand through acquisition. There's some people that just want to invest in the business, and there are individuals that invest in the business. So when you get that call, just because you get that call doesn't mean, and I'm sorry to say this, but doesn't mean that you're special, because everybody gets those calls. So you got to go a lot more into the understanding who the buyer is and what their motives are, and ask questions. Don't just think that because they called you, you have a deal. And by the way, getting a deal from the moment that you have that conversation until you actually close the deal, there's a hell of a lot of things that you got to go through that you have to be prepared for. So just because you get a call doesn't really mean anything.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. You're saying, hey, there's a lot of preparation that needs to go in. That's one of the things that you hit up on. What are some of the things? Can we go deeper into the preparation and what's the things that companies need to do to prepare to be at the point where you are ready to sell?
Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you got to prepare to sell. If you're going to sell 3 years from now, you got to start today. You can't start 2 months before. And the reason for that is because any buyer, any serious buyer, is going to go and look at your history, and they're going to look 3 years back. So today in 2025, they're looking at 22, 23, 24, and half of 25. So if you're not prepared in 22, well, now you have to swim upstream to get to that point. Number one reason why deals don't go through is because the financials are not very well taken care of. The accounting is horrible, and I see it over and over and over again. Unfortunately, business owners don't care that much about keeping records of their business, and that comes back to bite you every single time. You want to have your accounting in cash and accrual, because your buyers are going to look at your business from an accrual basis, not from a cash basis. The second thing that you want to make sure, and I'm saying this is the number one because that's the number one reason why you can't go through it. It's not necessarily the most important, but it's the number one reason why businesses don't sell. The second one, which is as important as that one, is having a good leadership team. You want the business to be transferable, sustainable. If you're a buyer, you want to buy a business that you know that when you buy it, it's going to continue, right? That's basically it. So you want to make sure that you have a strong management team, good organizational chart with well-defined responsibilities for each one of your teams, making sure that you have a good SOPs, procedures, and written and well-defined, that if you sold a lot last year, one of the questions that people ask is, okay, well, what did you do that led you to that growth? Most of the time, the owners can't really answer that. It's like, yeah, I did it. So you need to have a plan. You need to show that plan. The buyers are buying your business because it makes money this year, and because it's going to make money in the future. So you have to give them the assurance that once they buy it, they can continue to make money and actually grow. So those are the typical things why businesses don't get sold. If you're too important in the business and the business is you, then it's very hard to sell. Like, for example, in my case, I'll give you my example. I am the face of my own business. I don't make any I don't have any expectations to sell it, because I know that my name is there. Eventually I could make something bigger, but don't do what I do. Do something different. Make a business that you can actually sell by staying out of the business or keeping yourself out of the business.
One of the things that Hunter Ballou, who started RoofCON, did, I want to say in 2022 or 21, was he put in presidents and leadership for each of his companies, so he didn't have to be the face of any of those, so that if the opportunity ever came up to be able to sell, that would be something that we wouldn't have to fight in the future.
That
So
is brilliant.
yeah. So let me ask you this, just to dig a little bit deeper into some of the things that one of the things specifically was you were talking about financing and accounting. Um, do you recommend people bringing in a specific role within their organization for starting to keep all of the bookkeeping organized? Is that something you recommend outsourcing? What do you think is a good strategy?
Well, I think depends on the size of the business, but I would strongly recommend that if you have a business of decent size, maybe getting to 750, $1 million in EBITDA, you start thinking of having a fractional CFO. Your accountant is there typically just to help you save on taxes. They're not doing any accounting for decision-making accounting. And if you have a CFO, he will look into your numbers with a completely different view, which is actually the same view a buyer is going to look at your business with. A CFO will give you analysis on your working capital, on your ratios, on profitability, and give you strong ideas on how to improve the business. So you should have a fractional CFO as soon as you can, and not just an accountant that's going to see how you can save on taxes. That's the way I see it. And unfortunately, I see that many business owners don't do that because they know their business and they manage it well. But you can manage it a lot better and actually make it more much better of a target acquisition target if you have a fractional CFO. Now you can have somebody in house that could do the account, the bookkeeping, if you will, but you make sure that you have somebody that actually knows how to do bookkeeping and not just hire anybody. I can give you an example of one of my companies that I put for sale a few months ago, and it took us a long time to actually redo all the financials because the person that was actually inputting the data didn't know how to do it. And nobody was paying attention until they decided to put the business on the market. So, and now we have to go back all these years, and redo all that. So a buyer will understand what this business looks like. So they had somebody inside, but unfortunately that person wasn't really qualified as a bookkeeper. So find out that there's good bookkeepers out there that are in the industry and they know about how to do bookkeeping for roofing. And I would strongly suggest to look for somebody like that.
What about on the leadership side? What are the things that you're looking for when you're bringing on people to lead your companies?
Well, a leadership that can actually lead, it's a good point, that they're not coming to you and asking you everything, that they will be inspirational, to their team, that they know what they're doing, and each one of them in their own swimming lane, right? So you want to have a leader in sales, you want to have a leader in operations, and you want to make sure that they have a long history with the company. One of the things that buyers look for is turnover. And this is important. When you put the business up for sale, there's a point where you have to tell your leadership that you're going to be selling the business. And the question is, when should I tell my leadership that I'm selling the business? And in my view, you should tell your leadership that you're selling the business the moment you sign an LOI, not before and not after. But if you wait until you're actually signing the purchase agreement to tell the leadership, what you're going to cause is panic, and many of them are going to leave. And if your leadership leaves, your business is worth a lot less, and everything that you worked for just crumbles down, and you have to rebuild it again. So now not only you don't have a sell, but you also have to rebuild your business. Now, if you do it right and you have the conversation with your leadership, by the time you sign the LOI with a potential buyer, and you let your leadership know that they are being taken care of, and you have the right communications to them, and you actually put it in the deal that they will be taken care of, and you can work on that with stock options or with Fathom stock or incentives, long-term incentives. then the leadership is going to actually help you sell the business. Another example I can tell you is one of the deals that I'm working with. The owner actually, he has 6 um, managers, and he brings them to the meetings with the buyers, and the managers know that he's selling the business, and they're also supporting him to sell the business because they know that at the end of that road, they're going to be very well recognized, and I'm talking probably millions to each one of them. So if you can actually do that, um, you have, rather than having to hide from the team, you're actually bringing the team with you, and you're going to make your sale a lot more successful. But you have to know how to communicate to them. You have to know when to communicate as well.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, with RoofCon, one of our big focuses is leadership development. And so I would say for sure, not to just plug away at RoofCon at every chance, but if you are looking for a place to bring people within your organization to develop as leaders, that's a great place to start for us. So, so let's talk about one of the things is, let's say we've gotten through this point now, we've gotten some of these financials ready, we've got some leadership in place. We say, all right, I want to start looking at the journey of potentially selling my company. But there's a lot of different companies or people that I can reach out to. There's private equity companies, there's brokers, there's M&A firms, there's consulting, like there's all these different things. Can we talk a little bit about like what are the different things that are out there and where one might benefit one over the other?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I don't want to plug myself into it, but I will tell you that whether you want to work with me or not, you should have a broker or an M&A. Broker M&A in this level where you're looking at lower middle market, it's pretty much the same. I consider myself a broker, an M&A specialist, but you should have somebody on your side. Let's think about this for a minute, okay? And I'm seriously not saying that you got to come with me, but you have to have somebody on your side. You're going to be dealing with people whose only business is to buy businesses, and you have probably never sold a business, or maybe sold it once. And there's so many nuances to the whole process that you really want somebody that's going to be working with you, okay? So even if private equity calls you and they say, hey, I want to buy you, well, how do you know that this is the best deal? How do you shop around other buyers, right? So you need somebody on your side, and not only one person. What you do need is a team. You need a private equity, an M&A attorney that knows about M&A deals. And we're going to go into that in a minute. An M&A accountant that knows how to negotiate the accounting portion of the deal. And you also need a wealth manager that will help you minimize the tax impact of that deal and maximize the return on the new future investments that you're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of an M&A attorney, okay? I keep saying, for anybody who wants to hear, that price is not the only term that you have to discuss. It's sometimes not even the most important. The terms and conditions are extremely important. Any private equity is going to offer you, probably 50 to 70% cash, and the rest is going to be in some kind of terms. It's going to be either earnouts or rollback investment or some kind of incentives, okay? Now, sometimes those offers sound really nice on paper, but when you go to the fine print, that's where you find out that you're not getting the deal that you thought you were going to get. You're getting a raw deal. So, for example, they can offer you stock on the new company. Now, are they offering you stock on your own company or the whole portfolio of companies that they have? Is your stock type A, B, C? Is it subordinated to other stock or not? When you do the second bite at the apple, are you the first one getting paid or are you the last one getting paid? If you're doing seller financing, where are you also in the waterfall of payments? So all of those things, people just don't see them until it's unfortunately too late. So you have to, or clawbacks. I forgot about clawbacks as well, right? There's a lot of things that go into that fine print that only a lawyer that's used to reading LOIs and purchase agreements can actually determine and fight for you. So you want to go with a team of people that are going to put you in the same level as your buyer is. Your buyer buys businesses for a living, and they might be very nice and wine you and dine you, but that doesn't mean that they have 100% of your best interest in time. And I'm not saying anything bad about them. Each one of us is always looking in a negotiation for the best deal on your side. So you want to have a team, that's for sure. There are some brokers out there that work for buyers, and I work with them all the time. Okay, so every time I have a listing, I send them to buyers, brokers, private equities, and what have you. But some of them are not really forthcoming, and they call you and they say, hey, don't worry, I'm going to help you sell your business, and I'm not going to charge you anything. Well, they're not going to charge you anything because they're charging the buyer. And if they're charging the buyer, guess whose interest are they looking after? Not yours, your buyers. So make sure that you're ready for that, and you have your own team. It's so important. I've had so many situations where they were using their accounting or their own lawyer, and they're really not experts on this, and you could be leaving a lot of money on the table, or get in trouble because you don't know what those fine terms are. So
Yeah. Can we talk about specifically maybe some horror stories so that we can get an idea of that? Because I'm sure that as much as there are very positive things that come out of private equity deals, there are also some horror stories of things that maybe have gone wrong, and maybe how people that are watching can avoid those.
yeah, good question. I can tell you a few, that actually two that happened to me in the last month or so. One of the things that I do with anybody that wants to sell the business, I keep track of them. Every so often. If you talk to me about selling your business and you didn't actually, sign up yet, I keep track of them. And every 6 months or so, I send a message and see how things are going. Well, last year I had a listing that was a really good one, but the owner didn't want to sell because he felt that nobody could fill his shoes. And eventually he had several offers, declined all of them. And he says, well, you know what? I'm not going to sell my business. And I followed up with him actually a couple of weeks ago. And he replied back to me, I wish I had sold last year. Right. And I asked him, he said, well, now I can't sell the business anymore because I'm the numbers are not there. And, all this issue with the immigration and all that, my business is down the drain and I can't sell it. That was one. The other one was somebody that didn't want to sell the business at that point. And I followed up with him. And again, that was last week. The business closed. So those are two things that you have to be very aware of. You can't predict the future. If your business is a business that can be sold today, you really have to think of that. Other horror stories have to do with not having the right buyer, and the buyers giving you, like I said, you're going to make so much money at the second bite at the apple. And then when the second bite at the apple comes, you realize that you're going to be getting paid only after the investors get paid twice. So the investors had a guarantee of 2 times earnings, two times how do you call it? Return on the investment. So if they invested a dollar, they were expecting to get $2 before you got any money. Okay, and then came the managers that the investor hired, and they were senior to you as well. So the guy that actually thought it was going to get a huge bite at the apple, he didn't get anything because they sold it for a lot less than what it was expected. So that happens just way too often, and most of the time it happens because people are not ready. They don't understand the terms, right? So you want to make sure you have the right buyer. And I can't say this enough. It's not only about the price. When people ask me, hey, Claudio, how much is my business worth? Well, your business is worth X, but don't worry about that only. Worry about the terms, the conditions, and especially who your buyer is. Okay. Um, and there's one buyer that's good for one seller. Okay. That's it. But you got to find them. And in order to find them, you have to have a process to get them, right? So make sure that you're protecting your family, your people, yourself, your wealth when you're selling the business, so you don't get those horror stories. Unfortunately, there are way too many. Most of them, like I said, have to do because of the buyer is not the right buyer. There's a lot of, again, private equity has a bad rap, and for some good reason sometimes. Not everybody's like that. If you're selling to private equity, sell to people that already have either a platform in the roofing industry, or they can demonstrate that they have successful management of those businesses. I ask my buyers always, can you give me the name and phone number of the people that already sold businesses to you so we can do our independent checking? You got to do that, right? So there's just way too many. Or the other horror story that I got is, clawbacks and, or issues with liabilities. If you don't have a good lawyer working on your reps and warranties, you could be liable and actually end up losing money after you sell the business. All of that happens because you're not prepared to sell. So you got to be prepared in that sense. I think there was a couple of questions out there.
Yeah, Mark Alman asked, he said, I have a family-run business. What protections can I put in place for the other members of my family, kids specifically, so that they can remain as leaders in the business?
That's a great point, and you have to negotiate that with the buyers. You can put provisions there that they stay employed, that they get some kind of long-term incentives, that they get some kind of equity. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but it's going to depend on the deal. And again, I think the best to do is to actually know who your buyer is, because anything on paper eventually can be somehow changed if the buyer is not the right buyer. So work with a lawyer, but also have your eyes and ears way open.
What are any red flags specifically? Let's say you're meeting with private equity companies, you're starting to talk with them. What are red flags that should immediately stand out to you?
Okay, number one is assets under management. So that's the first thing you say. Okay, fine, you're a private equity. How much money are you managing? Where's your money coming from? And if they're not private equity, they're gonna go around, and they're not gonna give you that information. They're probably gonna send you a couple of investors that signed uh, a letter saying that they will back you up. That means that they're not actually private equity; they're search funds or they're independent sponsors. The other really big red flag is, okay, so who's your team? Who's going to come and manage the business once you buy the business? Do you have people that actually know about roofing, or not? Are you going to rely on me as the seller to continue to manage the business? The other one is, give me your phone number, the phone number and names of the people that you already bought business from. And if they are reluctant to give you that information, or they're telling you that they're giving you the runaround, all of those are huge red flags.
Now, can I ask?
And if they hold on, one that's very important. Sorry, Diego.
Yeah,
but one that's very important is if they try to push you into signing an LOI, and they're not allowing you to actually have the LOI reviewed by your attorney. That's another very big red flag.
Now, a little bit earlier we were talking about specifically having, bookkeepers and maybe bringing in a fractional CFO. what are some of the things when we're talking about some of those things that we need to have in place? What are some of the metrics that we need to be tracking? Obviously, the for anyone who's maybe not overly aware of the process, obviously the big thing that always gets thrown around is the EBITDA, right? So what's the EBITDA in your company? But can you explain specifically what is EBITDA, and then any other metrics that roofing company owners should be tracking to make sure you're on the right path to selling your company?
Yes, yeah. Well, EBITDA is the number one, but it's not the only one. So EBITDA, and for those who heard this term and they're wondering what it is, that's basically the number that you use. So you will multiply for a multiplier to get your business valuation. EBITDA means E, earnings, B, before, I is interest, depreciation and amortization, interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA. Basically, is you take your net income and you add back the interests that you're paying on the business, the taxes that you're paying on the business, the depreciation and the amortization, and that's the EBITDA. Now, from that, you will add more things back. For example, your salary, or if your spouse is working and is in your business but she's not working, or if your son is getting paid, or personal expenses or one-time expenses, you add it all back, and now you have what's called the adjusted EBITDA. That adjusted EBITDA is going to be multiplied by a number that's going to vary a lot depending on everything else that we discussed, and that's going to give you the business valuation. So I should come in saying, for example, your business, I'm going to pay, I don't know, $10 million. I am taking, I don't know, $2 million in EBITDA multiplied by a 5x. So that would be how an LOI should look. So you know that because it's going to fluctuate in the next few months until you close, you have a really good way to actually measure what your final price is going to be. But that's a basic. I mean, and even getting to that basic is hard for us sometimes. But then you have sales, different types of sales by employee, sales by sales rep, profitability by project. That's something that is very important, and it's hard sometimes to get how many contracts you signed every month, and we keep that with either any one of the CRMs should give you that information, and you have to track it. What does the business owner do in the business? There's a whole lot of different metrics that you should be taking into account when you want to sell the business for the right amount. But if you don't have EBITDA, everything else doesn't really matter. That's the first number that you have to look at.
Can you explain a little bit about how the multiplier is figured out?
Yes. The multiplier, any business, whether it's roofing or the restaurant across the street, is the same thing. You're here to make money. And the people that are going to invest in your business are going to pay money for that profit that you're making. So the less the risk, or the lower the risk, the higher that multiplier. The higher the risk, the lower the multiplier. Okay, so it's basically a balance between risk and reward, and it's going to be different for each industry and for each business. Okay, so that multiplier can go anywhere between 1 and 10. Now, when I say 10, I want to be very cautious and say that a regular business is never going to get a 10 times EBITDA. Okay, you really need to have an extremely outstanding business with excellent metrics, with excellent management, and that makes at least $10 million or more in EBITDA. That's when you start getting the bigger multipliers. Again, the multiplier is a measure of the transferability of the risk of the business versus the rewards of the business. And you can increase it by making buyers compete for your business. Okay, so you have a lot of people that they receive one offer and you want to go with that offer. No, you should have at least 5 to 10 offers, and then make your buyers compete for it, and you can increase that multiplier. Now, an average multiplier, just because people are always wondering, well, the average is going to be between 4 and 6. That's where most businesses are going to end up. It's extraordinary to get 7 or 8 times EBITDA.
Yeah, and that's, you're saying specifically in the roofing business, that's where
Yes, because the thing is, most buyers, not everybody, I don't like to paint everybody with a broad brush, but most buyers, when they're buying a business like a roofing company, they're buying stability. They're not really, it's not a tech sell, because tech sales could go 20, 30 times. But the reason for that is because they're not measuring it over EBITDA. They're measuring over the potential earnings that they're going to have in the future, which is a different way of measuring it. But a company, a roofing company, is typically selling, reliable earnings. So that's why those numbers. And then you have to do this math, right? If you're going to invest in a business and you're going to take a loan to pay for the business, you have to pay back the loan, and then you have to pay yourself. So if the multiplier is too high, it's not going to allow you to pay your loan. Therefore, you're actually buying a business just to pay somebody else money, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah, 100% makes sense. Let me ask you this. In 2021, when Hunter sold his roofing company, I feel like that was one of the first that I had heard about, at least at the time, where someone came in and bought at least a private equity company came in and bought a roofing company. And I feel like since then, it has just been, I see it constantly in my social media feed, where people are, there's just a big wave of private equity that's entered into the roofing industry. And so can you talk to me about what, obviously no one knows what the future holds, but can you tell me what you believe the future holds for the roofing industry when it comes to private equity, how it's going to affect the industry as a whole? And yeah, just what maybe some of your predictions are there.
Yeah, yes, I don't like to make predictions, but I think we can have educated guesses, if you will, rather than prediction, right? We're at the beginning stages of investment in the roofing industry. The reason why private equity and investors in general are interested in the roofing industry is because it's a very fragmented industry. There's tons of small businesses out there, and what their play is to actually roll them up into bigger businesses and bring in technology and bring in investments to make it a bigger business, if you will. So right now we are at the beginning stages. I think it's going to go on for the next couple of years at least, in the beginning stage. But I'm starting to see many private equities that where they had the threshold of investment at the $1 million in EBITDA, just calling me and say, well, now we're looking for $2.5 million, $3 million in EBITDA. So that shows to me that they're maturing, right? That the investment or the life cycle of the industry is starting to mature, because many of them that used to buy smaller businesses are now looking to buy a little bit of a bigger business. That's typical of what's happening. So eventually we're going to end up with much less players, much bigger players. It's not going to be just one, okay? There's going to be a lot, but every one of them is going to be a lot bigger. So that's one thing that, if you have a small business today, you want to make sure that, you plan ahead 5 or 6 years from now, because you're going to be competing with bigger boys that have much more money and resources than you do. So you either fight the current or go along with the current, and that's the decision that you have to make. I think that eventually it's going to be a lot more professionalized. It's going to be a lot more technology driven, and a lot fewer actors in the business, and also, unfortunately, a lot less personal. It's going to be a lot more corporate. But that's what happens with every industry when this trend starts. It happened to HVAC and many other industries, actually.
I think one of the big things, and we've talked about this at Revolt retreats and things that we host, is making sure that you are starting to think now of what is your exit strategy, because everyone at some point is going to exit in some way, shape, or form. Maybe that means you're going to sell your business. Maybe that means you're going to pass your business on to your kids. And maybe there's other ways. Maybe, but either way, it's figuring out what your plan is and starting to work towards, whatever your plan is. Maybe it's just being ready if the right opportunity comes by, that you are further down along the road than maybe you would have been a couple years ago, right?
Yes. First of all, you are going to exit your business. Whether you do it on your terms or somebody else's terms is the question, right? So you either, you can die and you're going to exit your business. Somebody's going to inherit it. You can sell it, or you can be bought by somebody, and or you have to close it. At the end of the day, your business is eventually going to part ways with you. So you want to be ready for when that happens. Whether you sell it or not, it doesn't matter. You have to be ready to sell it anyway. Many reasons for selling businesses, and again, I can tell you specific personal experiences that I had. Divorce. You get divorced, and then you have to sell the business to split it with your spouse or whatever. And if you're not ready for that, you're gonna sell it under the actual price that you could get. You have to start getting ready to sell the business the moment that you open the doors of the business, and always think about it as, like Stephen Covey said in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, start with the end in mind. If I'm going to sell my business today, will I get the maximum for it or not? And if I don't, what do I need to do to get it? And even if I don't sell the business, that's a great management checks and balances for you, right? Because if your business is good for selling, means that you created value, and you as an entrepreneur, your job is to actually create value, right? That's basically what entrepreneurs do. We build and create value. So that's a good check for you to know that you're doing the right thing. If I can sell my business tomorrow with no problem, that means that I'm doing everything is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. 100%. With the RoofCON team specifically, we really dig deep into a lot of the decisions that we're making for, like, hey, if this is something we're going to be changing up, is this getting us closer to the point where we can sell or not? And we're pretty transparent with the team too, of like, hey, this is the end goal. And I know that's something you talked about earlier of, sometimes with your organization, you want to keep that more private. Sometimes you are more open about it with your team. Just obviously depends on how open you are with your team and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of variables there, right? With the RoofCON team specifically, we are very open that if at any point the opportunity comes up to where we can sell, then we want to be ready at least to be able to do that. And so a lot of the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis are scrutinized of like, is this actually getting us closer to be able to sell or not? Because if it's not, then even if it's something that may get us some short wins now, it's not actually valuable for the long-term vision of the business.
Great point. Great point. And if I could give some advice to people who are building the business, I think you and Hunter, they're doing the right thing about that, because you want the team to be with you. If you could actually tell your team, hey, you know what? I'm going to sell this business 5 years from now. Let's work all of us so all of us can build value on the business. One of the attorneys that I work with specializes in creating long-term incentives for companies that want to build it to sell it. Okay, and that's very, very good, because that's going to make everybody in the team make the right decisions from a long-term point of view. It's not like you're doing the short-term, get rich quick thing. You're building a business to be sold, and as an employee, as part of the company, that you will be rewarded for that. So you're not against it, you're actually helping. And what better way to build something than having everybody aware and helping you get to that point, right? So there's all different strategies. I would definitely like to help anybody by just giving them the connection to this attorney, for example, if you want to go that route, because that's going to be the best one. Now, the absolutely worst thing you can do is to tell your team that you're selling the day before you sign the LO, the IO, the APA. Sorry. So that's the absolute worst, and most people, unfortunately, do that, and that's where you get in trouble. But anytime before that, if you can actually manage to get your team aligned to it, it's great, great idea.
Yeah.
And
Guys,
yeah.
if you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We are about we're getting towards the end of the webinar, so drop your questions now or raise your hand if you have any questions. And while we wait on that, what I want to do is, obviously Claudio is going to be at our event at RoofCON 2026. RoofCON is going to be in Oklahoma City, January 5th through the 7th, so people can kick off the year with RoofCON. You can bring your team, and we're going to do some really cool stuff for your sales team as well, so that they can get training. We're going to have stuff, leadership development stuff. We're going to have a lot of training from everything from marketing, sales, leadership, recruiting, finance, like everything. Obviously, private equity stuff. We're going to have a lot of this stuff at RoofCON. And I actually didn't talk to Claudio about this, but what we're going to do for the people that attended this webinar here, I'm going to drop this in the chat, but you can use code Claudio40 and you can get 40% off your RoofCON tickets by using that code, because we want you guys there. We want you to bring your team out and get to network with people like Claudio. And obviously, like, we're going to have 200 exhibitors there. Like, Claudio is, a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate him coming on and talking through and answering questions. And like, this has been extremely educational, and there's tons of people like Claudio that come in and just, we try to make it as educational as possible. We didn't want it to be a pitch fest where people just are constantly getting pitched their services. It's like, hey, how can I get people from the industry to just come in and share their wealth of knowledge with the industry? And so yeah, use that code Claudio40 for 40% off your RoofCON tickets. We also, this is something that you don't see a lot with conferences, is because we were able to move to Oklahoma City and get some of our expenses down. We actually were able to bring prices down for ticket holders, which, again, you typically never see that with conferences. Just everything in general, prices go up on everything. We're trying to do our hardest to make it as accessible as possible for roofing companies to come out. Claudio, before we finish up, unless anyone else has any questions, what are any final thoughts you want to give to the audience about private equity, about preparing for the future, anything in general?
Yeah, well, what I always say is that you really can't predict the future. No matter how much we try, we can't. So what we need to do is to be prepared for the most possible scenarios in the future. And one of them is actually exiting your business. So you have to be prepared for that. There's a lot of resources that you can access to do that. I think, Diego, you're right. You have to have your leadership working in the business, but think about it, right? This is an insurance for you and your family. If most of your wealth is tied up to the valuation of your business, you are at risk, and sometimes you don't realize that risk until it's too late. Like this guy that said, I had to close my business. He wasn't expecting to do that. He wasn't planning to do it, but he did. And you don't want that to happen. So as an insurance for you, you should see if your business is sellable today. If it's not, get it ready. And I can tell you that many businesses that come and they want to sell, I tell them not to. I'm not here to push you to sell the business, but I'm here to tell you that you should be thinking of it, even if you don't want to do it, because again, you never know when the next COVID comes, when the next you know 2008 housing crisis comes, and you want to make sure that you're ready for that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And someone said in the comments, selling a business is like investing. If you have an amazing offer, you better take it. You can always find or build another business, but if you have your retirement in the bag, take it.
Yes, I agree with you. Whoever said it, right
Jason
on.
Solomon.
Oh, Jason, you're right.
Yeah. So, guys, if you have any,
Okay.
this is going to be final call for questions. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. We are going to get the recording from this, and we're going to send it to everyone that registered. So whether you're able to be here for a little bit of it, you were here the whole time, or even for the people that registered and were not able to attend, because there's quite a few of those, we're going to send it to everyone so you get a chance to watch this later and maybe watch this with your leadership team. And to close this out, Claudio, if someone wants to connect with you, maybe ask some more specific questions about their business in general, or maybe do some sort of consultation with you, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, theroofingbizbroker.com. Call my cell phone 954-774-4141. Send me an email, claudio.vilas@theroofingbizbroker.com, and I would gladly do for free an analysis of your business. So I'm not going to give you just the price that you think might, or that I think might be worth. I'm also going to give you an analysis on how ready your business is for sale. It's a seller assessment, and we do that for free. It's about a 20-page report, and you're going to get a lot out of it. And that's what I can do.
Cool. Once we send out the recording to everyone, we'll add in all of your contact information in there. Okay.
Perfect.
And we'll have it out within 24 hours. So sometime by middle of the day tomorrow, everyone should have that in their emails. Just be on the lookout. So last time too, if you want to use code Claudio40 for 40% off your RoofCON tickets as well, feel free to do that. We'll have that out for a while. And Claudio, thank you so much. We'll see you at RoofCON. Hope to see everyone there. Thank you guys so much for participating and being a part of this.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.